Hello you paranoid vegetables, and welcome to my review of Way of the Samurai. Okay, sure, this game's got some issues. Yes, the movement is incredibly clunky and you can't sprint, which is a bit odd. Sure, trying to target the enemies is a bit difficult and doesn't always work how you want it to. But the actual combat is very satisfying. Just because it feels like you're running through treacle and syrup and honey at the same time doesn't mean when you actually hit someone with your katana it can't be satisfying, because that's basically Way of the Samurai in a nutshell. There are plenty of issues with the game, but the actual execution of its high notes, of its best points, is really, really good. Also, if the game was incredibly polished, you wouldn't see the AI do some absolutely crazy things, like disappearing into the ether, flying off into the sky, or just being dead for a long time, and then still standing up without a weapon and not being interactable, and then suddenly dying again, just in case they forgot to do it in the first place. Yes, Way of the Samurai would be so much better with some quality of life improvements, like for example when there's a katana on the floor, you don't need to just empty your weapon sack, as it were, and throw your previously owned katanas onto the ground to pick up a new one just to check its name and stats. If it actually had the little stat bar at the bottom telling you what the pros and cons of the weapon were, that would be so much better. And yes, being able to sprint would go a long way, like I mentioned, but it still has so many good points. For example, the game is hilarious, the characters are very entertaining, and as you saw at the start, you can get into a very bad situation where one line of dialogue leads you to being tied up on a train track, so that's always a good thing. That, and you can just go around kicking people, just because. You can be that kind of samurai if you like. Not very honourable samurai, but you can be that kind if you want to. And as just mentioned, there are so many dialogue choices. There's ways that you can go into different outcomes, different paths, different factions, different clans, just from going onto different routes and meeting new characters. There are so many choices and so many endings as well which you can go through, which is great if you like replay value in your games and you don't just want to play them once. If you do want to play them once, this really isn't for you. The story is very much non-linear, so you really do have to make your own choices, really do have to go down whatever path you kind of want to. It's not really hand-fed to you that this is exactly what you need to do. You do have to explore if you want to meet certain characters, or go to different areas, or get different endings. You can't just be hand-fed everything. Some of them are a little bit more obscure than you think they would be. Also, amongst those story paths and dialogue choices, you can kill everyone. It just doesn't matter. If someone upsets you, just mid-conversation, you can just pull out your katana and have a go at them. That is, unless the game decides, actually, this person's quite useful for a little bit longer. So, wait 30 minutes and then we'll let you kill them. And while there are lots of different endings, the setup to them is pretty much the same. Meet a certain character, do one or two things for them, whether that's a case of killing a few enemies to prove your worth, or killing a lot of enemies to prove your worth. That's pretty much what it boils down to. There's not very many talk your way out of certain situations. It's pretty much show your worth as a samurai and your ability to use a katana, and then go from there. On the plus side, it is very quick to get the endings. If you want to 100% everything, it's not going to take you too long to be able to do it. Getting back to the combat system, you can learn different styles if you like, so it doesn't have to be that you can only use your katana one certain way. There are different stances which you can use, and different ways to unlock different skills for that stance that you're using as well. And there are a few different weapon varieties to keep you interested. It's not going to blow you away, there's not like 4 million, but no, there's still a few. Added with those weapon varieties, you do have the ability to create your own character. Unfortunately, there's not really too many choices to go through. That is a bit of a shame. It's kind of lackluster as far as the character customization goes, but at least it's there. Another thing to note, that Way of the Samurai falls into it's not so much it's difficult with the AI, but they just give the game more HP and just do more damage. So it's a little bit of a shame that the actual AI doesn't get smarter during those harder difficulties, and instead it's just, they do the same thing, they just hit harder and take longer to kill, which always annoys me. Why not just add more interesting AI that actually evolve and, dare I say, adapt to the scenario? And while the combos themselves feel great, there is one thing that really irritates me, and that's if you press back twice, you will jump out of the way and then land on your back and stay there for what seems like an eternity and just get beat up on, all because you accidentally pressed back twice. Even if you didn't mean it, it happened to me quite a few times. Maybe my controller hates me, but yeah, it just seems very easy to be able to fall onto your back, which is very frustrating. Do I recommend Way of the Samurai? Yes, absolutely. Of course it's got some issues, as I've mentioned, it's got loads of issues, but it is worth playing this game just for the satisfying combat, but also for the crazy characters and the things you can do. It's definitely worth giving it a pop.